Your earlier tutorial strongly signaled that if you cannot acquire a .com, do not bother using the domain name. Question is whether you still believe this, or if you think Google's new algorithms and other factors make it easier for .info extension, for example, to have a chance. I always stress the importance of rich multi-page content, so can a robust website overcome a .info extension? That is a really good question, Lou. Depending on exactly which earlier tutorial of mine you might have been reading or watching, I have kind of progressed my domain name selection techniques over the years because of things such as Google's changes with their algorithm. Many years ago, getting the exactmatch.com domain for whatever your primary keyword phrase was that you wanted to target was typically the best way to go, because you could get up in the top rankings fairly fast, even for the higher traffic phrases. The main problem is they all got snatched up pretty quick, and it all started getting abused, and then Google, in response to that, made their own changes. And it's not that they penalize the exactmatch.com domains these days, but they simply don't give it as much benefit as it used to receive. So in that regard, you can use a .info domain if you would like to for the exact match domain, for example, if you can't find the .com. However, really more so than going for a .info extension of an exact match domain, I'd still search for a .com, but just don't worry about the exact match domain anymore. Go for more of a branded domain name. It can be something completely of your own creation, or it can be a little bit of a combination of being a branded domain and being a keyword-based domain. For example, you can simply do something like attach your name or some kind of descriptive adjective onto part of your keyword phrase. Don't use the whole keyword phrase, but whatever the primary part of it is, take that word out of your keyword phrase and mash that with other words or even made up words to come up with a branded domain. Because it really is more these days about, like you were saying, the importance of the rich multi-page content more so than your domain name selection. Unfortunately, there's no quick trick anymore that you can really do to fool Google to give you amazing rankings really fast without having to put forth, some work to actually get there. Not to say that it can't happen quickly, but it's more the work part that's important. You used to be able to register an exact match domain name, slap up a bunch of automated content, and you had top 10 rankings in a week, but that simply doesn't happen anymore. So focus on the content more so, and just choose a domain that suits what your website is going to be about, and worry less about what your main keyword phrase is that you're trying to target, and worry about that keyword phrase more when you're writing your content, when you're building your website, as opposed to your domain name selection. A site that I've built, Down Comforter Guide, in Azon Masterclass 1. That site is using an exact match domain. However, I could have easily taken the word down or the word comforter and added additional words to it to come up with my own branded domain name. I could do something like fluffycomforters.com and make it all about down comforters, and I could specifically target down comforter guide even as my main keyword phrase for that site, while still having a domain name that is not the exact match domain. And it doesn't have to contain a keyword like that, like how I used comforters in fluffycomforters.com, but that is kind of a trade-off between branded and exact match. If you want your domain to have a little bit of meaning to it when people actually see it, so they can make a quick judgment for themselves. Lou is saying he can no longer find dog crate sizes on Google SERP. If you had gone through the training material that involved that site getting created, then I don't really consider that relevant anymore these days. I actually don't even own dog crate sizes anymore, and haven't since the end of 2010, I believe, was when I sold it. And I think it's even under a second owner now, and I did try to pass along my recommendations for it. I think they expanded the site with automated content and low quality writing, and kind of diluted it from what I originally set it out to be. I'm not quite sure how the site does these days. However, I don't really consider that to be something that speaks for my tactics anymore. Well, unfortunately, can't do anything about changing that site since I no longer have ownership of it. However, since you are in Team Azon Pro, I would highly recommend taking a look at Azon Masterclass 1. That's my more modern Amazon site building training class, where I walk you through the creation of downcomforterguide.com. Downcomforterguide.com, even though it is still an exact match domain name, gets really great traffic from Google. A lot of product keyword phrases, even things like IKEA, Misa, Ron, I believe, is one of them. That particular page on that site receives a lot of traffic. So if you are trying to, emulate my site building strategies, I would definitely recommend going for more of what Azon Masterclass 1 teaches, as opposed to even older training of mine. That's a good question also, Lou. He's asking, one thing I mentioned in class 1, how do I target other keywords for other pages on your site? Not sure how you physically target them. I can pull up a website. I'll pull up Down Comforter Guide here for you as a reference. I'll go to my IKEA page. Now, while the main website might be targeting Down Comforter Guide, each additional page that you build on your website can target another keyword phrase, or maybe a small range of extremely relational keyword phrases. However, you do not have to try to target a keyword phrase on every single page of your site. In fact, I usually like to put at least some pages on my website that are not necessarily going after any specific keyword phrase, where maybe the title of my page is not referencing any particular keyword phrase, simply to show Google that this is a naturally built website, that it's not just a site with pages, with each page having a title that is a different keyword phrase, for example. However, that is the basic idea of how you target additional keyword phrases on additional pages of your website. Number one, your title is one of the main things that the search engine has to go on, and it's also what people are going to end up seeing when they find your site in Google's search results. So with that said, you want your title to, number one, include some kind of a keyword phrase. And it doesn't have to be an exact keyword phrase. It can be something relational. It can be short, or it can be long and descriptive. I actually like to try to change it up a little bit, so I'm not just using a series of keyword phrases throughout all of my page titles. On this particular page, however, you could definitely consider IKEA down comforters to be a keyword phrase. I'm sure there's some kind of search traffic for that particular term, and I do believe I actually have some kind of a ranking on that particular keyword phrase as well. However, that's not the only thing that this particular page ranks for on Google. I actually rank for a lot of relational keyword phrases. And what I mean by relational is you could consider basically every keyword phrase that I rank for on with this particular page. It's going to have something to do with the title of my page, IKEA down comforters in this case. So I have rankings for things like My Saran. That happens to be one of the main ones that's bringing in a lot of traffic for me. My ranking floats around there, and I believe it also depends on exactly what you search for. But just searching for IKEA My Saran, I have a number 4 ranking. I'm nestled right below Amazon, but actually outrank IKEA.com itself. So I consider that to be a very good placement for this particular website. And this actually brings in quite a decent amount of traffic just on this one phrase. And there's a lot of other more longer keyword phrases, long tail keyword phrases that I'm ranking for with this particular page. And My Saran, as you can see, is nowhere in my title. Even if you look up in my browser tab, or if you look up in my URL, I'm just using the word IKEA up there. The additional content here is targeted in a number of different ways, really. You do have your title. That is one way that you can go about targeting keyword phrases. You also have your URL. You have other unseen elements to the page, such as the content that maybe Google pulls out. And there's also the meta description that I actually wrote for the page, but it looks like it appears as though Google is actually pulling content out of my page and not using my meta description. But your meta description throughout the actual content of your page itself. Things like links within your page, images that are in your page. Further down the page, I have the Amazon products that are being targeted and features for the different down comforters and things of that nature. Google can see when they follow a link from one of my Amazon ads here over to Amazon, they can also see the content on that page and the images that are contained on that page. So they'll look at all the different aspects of your site. The important thing to remember, though, is you don't want to overdo it with whatever it is that you're trying to target. This actually kind of ties into what I had planned for bonus training tonight in case there were not enough questions to fill the whole hour, is keyword frequency in terms of not overdoing it with your keyword phrases. However, the actual training that I was going to be doing is more to do with semantic keywords and things of that nature. But just to show you here real quick, if I take this particular page on my site and I plug it in to a keyword density tool, I'm not flooding my page with references to IKEA or to my Saran. I use them very strategically throughout my page. IKEA is only used 15 times throughout that entire page. My Saran is only used 9 times, right in the 2 to 2.5%. And there are other phrases and words that are used more frequently. However, those words may not necessarily be keyword phrases, but they are likely relational semantic words to whatever it is that I'm targeting. That's a good question, Lou. Something I would consider to be a common question too. He is asking, why do I find keywords that have low search numbers but high cost per click? I assume you're referring to inside of the Google Keyword Planner, right? Okay, those keywords, the cost per click and even any competition indication that the Keyword Planner gives you, that information is solely restricted to Google advertising, Google AdWords. So if you're trying to rank on those keywords organically by simply putting content on a website and hoping Google will put you up in their top 10, then that competition and the cost per click really doesn't have any relevance to what you're doing. Maybe vaguely. The only way I would say vaguely is you can consider the high competition and the high cost per click numbers that you see on some keyword phrases in the keyword tool. You can consider that to be an indication of somebody somewhere out there, some marketer or some company is interested in traffic from that keyword phrase. The more competition it has, the higher cost per click that it has, then the more interest there is in it. Essentially, you have more different companies and marketers all bidding for the same keyword phrase. And so that drives up the cost per click. Well, the reason why you would have some keyword phrases that have low search numbers, but they have a high cost per click, is because there are different ways you can essentially select your keywords in Google AdWords. You can specifically choose one keyword after the next, but you can also do things more like closely relational terms, or even more broadly related terms. So, for example, I could place a Google ad and I could bid $10 per click on the keyword cars, but I might bid not just on the keyword cars, but on basically any other closely related terms, things that would have the word cars contained within it. And so then, no matter what the traffic levels and no matter what those keywords really are, if they match my bidding conditions, then it would register a bid and raise the cost per click. So there might be low traffic phrases that people are interested in, and they might be bidding on them directly, or they might be bidding on them indirectly by bidding on a broader term, basically. However, when you're choosing keyword phrases that you want to actually target in your website content, the advertising competition isn't really that important, because that has no relevance to whether or not you're going to have a chance to rank in the organic search results. I'm more interested in finding out how many different websites are out there trying to target that keyword phrase than I am finding out how many advertisers are trying to target it. Right, definitely. A lot of times the people that are paying for the traffic, they're not making a nice, robust website. They're, doing something that is heavily focused on getting the user to take a specific action, because they're paying for every single person that they are sending to that particular page. Muhammad, he is asking about what is my take on content generator software. Yeah, I have suggested some of them in the past. I'm usually pretty picky about the ones that I will suggest. They usually need to be able to create content that makes some kind of sense, has some kind of useful value to it, or else it's not going to help get good search rankings, and it's not going to be well received by your site visitors either. So as long as the content that it's creating makes sense and is useful, then I do think it is okay to use it. However, you still have to kind of be careful about how you use it. The same way you might have certain aspects to your website that are not completely unique content. For example, let's say you have, a product review page on a page of your website. The entire page, or part of the page even, might be content that's coming directly from Amazon's website. And it's not that it's bad to use some duplicate content like that. That's not what Google refers to as duplicate content. However, you have to be careful about how much you use. A lot of people will look at the content generators and any kind of automated content and think, well, this is so fast and easy, I'll just build my entire website with it. And so that's what they do, and ultimately that's not a website that Google can ever really get behind. Even if it does short term, it will figure out whatever tactic it is that is being used to trick them into giving good rankings to ultimately a low value website. And they'll simply make changes to their algorithm. And then one night you'll wake up, or one morning you'll wake up, and your traffic will simply disappear from that site. So what you have to do, if you are using any kind of a content generator, any kind of automated content that simply exists anywhere else besides your own website, where your website is not the first website out there ever to have that content, you can use it, but combine it with your own unique content. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the same page, but it needs to be on your website. I like for my unique content to outweigh any content that's going to be automated, whether it is within each individual page or whether it is on a site-wide basis. So for example, you could use software that creates an automated Amazon store for you, but you don't want one that's going to have thousands of pages on it. And you either do nothing in addition to that, or maybe you only write a couple of pages of unique content to go along with it. What you really are more looking to do is kind of like what I've done with Down Comforter Guide, where you have a lot of unique informational content throughout your site, and your product pages are a small section of it. So this small section of the site could be your automated Amazon product pages that are generated from a store builder or something like that. So it's really just all in how you use it. I think too many people simply get caught up in the hopeful thought that they can take these shortcuts and just click a button and have all this work done for them, and that's all they have to do to get the results. So it's not that you don't want to use it, just use it carefully. That's my take. And try to get your unique content to outweigh your generated and or duplicate or automated content. Let's see, Muhammad is asking, he has added YouTube videos on my websites recently. Do I need to add plugin of Google Video XML? You're not. Are you referring to the sitemap XML plugin? No. Okay. I might not be familiar with that particular plugin. Well, what does it do? Oh, it's for videos. Does it just like it works the same way, like creates the sitemap and everything, but is it doing it of your YouTube URLs or URLs from your own website? YouTube. Huh. And then it submits that to Yeah, okay, you embed the videos off of YouTube. I got you. I mean, it certainly can't hurt to do something like that that might notify Google of your new videos, since it would be content off of your website. And there's other ways you can notify Google of things like that, though. Simply putting a link from your own website to something like your YouTube video URL. Once Google goes through and looks at your page and sees that link, it'll follow it off to YouTube and make sure it gets indexed that way. However, at least when it comes to YouTube, I really don't worry too horribly much about Google picking up the video in terms of getting it indexed, because Google actually owns YouTube, so they will usually end up getting those videos indexed at some point. However, doing what you're talking about doing, adding in a plugin that'll essentially create a list and do maybe ping them or something for you, it certainly can't help. It may help to get it happening faster than it would otherwise. If you are recording your videos live and not really doing like editing with audio and video and stuff like that, you can also do the Google Hangouts method, and you'll actually get your videos indexed. That's really the fastest way to get a brand new YouTube video indexed, is by publishing it through Google Hangouts, basically recording it that way and letting it get auto-published to your YouTube account as a result. That's also a good question, Lou. He says, I'm weak technically, but can do a simple WordPress template site, but feel lost doing coding. Does my Weaver training give lots of help in adapting template sites? I know you made a lot of changes in dog crate sizes, and it is intimidating. Dog crate sizes in particular did have a lot of custom changes made to it. A lot of basically, little designs within the page just to make it look a little less plain, a little more professionally done. However, stuff like that is not absolutely necessary with your sites, and you can really go the more simple route if you're more comfortable with it. Doing other things like what I've done with Down Comforter Guide, with my menu systems and how everything is laid out in here, I do discuss the specific coding aspects to all of that and try to teach how to implement those things without having much technical knowledge, or maybe even no technical knowledge even. As the masterclass series advanced, once I got into 2 and 3, I started making actual code generators where you just punch in the text and it'll spit out the code that you would need for a menu of not necessarily just like what you see here, but of the sites that I made in those additional series. So if you're weak technically, you might want to use those code generators from Azon Masterclass 2 and Azon Masterclass 3. Or you can use the coding guides from Azon Masterclass 1. The The Weaver training that you were asking about is kind of more about teaching you everything that the theme can do. And it does demonstrate a lot of that, but it's not really a walkthrough on taking the theme and setting it up to create a whole site design. Things like that are, those training classes can really more be found within Azon Masterclass 1, 2, and 3, probably more so from Azon Masterclass 1. As I progressed through those series, I tried not to be too horribly repetitive with things that I was teaching. So there was some building upon that training. So I would look in, the initial site setup and the theme installation types of lessons from those series to get that kind of help you might be seeking. Whereas the Weaver training would be more about learning maybe some of the finer details, all the different settings and options available within the theme. And if you want a crash course on coding, check out Techie Masterclass. I get into some basic HTML and CSS and even things like PHP in that particular series. So I know it can be intimidating, I guess, to look at one of my sites and think, well, wow, how am I going to, put something like that together without having that coding knowledge? However, I do take that into account. I certainly don't expect for my customers to be anywhere near as well versed or to necessarily even have any technical training when they come in to start my training. So I do try to cover all the basics of that stuff and build on everything. It's just possible that the exact help you're looking for may not be within a specific training class, like how I broke off a lot of the technical training into Techie Masterclass, for example. So then I could do future training and not have to dive too much into the technical aspects of it. So if I seem to skip over things like that, it was likely contained in an earlier class. Yes, definitely the intense technical stuff definitely takes away from actually finding your niche and building your website. So I have taken that into even more account as my training has progressed. The code generators in Series 2 and Series 3 especially, to help people completely avoid the technical stuff. They just have to enter in text and then copy and paste all the code is the extent of the messing with code that is really intended in those series. Well, thank you, Mohammed. I'm glad that you are enjoying my my new exit plugin, Azon Exit Cache. For anyone else that may not have checked that out already, if you go to the plugins page in Team Azon Pro, that's been added for you to download for free. Get a full rights, developer license rights to the pro version of that plugin included with your membership. And that plugin has not been publicly launched yet. However, I think I'm under 2 weeks away now from publicly releasing that one. Tried to put quite a lot of work and extra polishing into that one, so I've been enjoying that one myself and glad to hear that some of you guys are as well. Now I don't have a lot of time left here. However, I thought I could still at least quickly dive into what I was going to mention for you guys with that bonus training that I had been talking about earlier. And if need be, I'll get a little more in depth with this and make a separate training lesson on it. But I wanted to give you guys some additional help when it came to writing your actual content. I find myself a lot of times, if I do not know about a subject that I'm trying to write about, you'll often sit there and keep trying to repeat the same words or phrases over and over again because you don't have other words in your head to use as a replacement. Well, in addition to helping yourself get some ideas for things that you can write about relating to any given keyword phrase that you might be trying to target, that same kind of research really ties into semantic keywords. Basically, where you have a word that you're trying to target, and Google's not just going to look at the content of your page for that exact word. It's going to look for other words that are closely relational to the word that you're targeting, in addition to the word that you're actually targeting. So you can't write content that repeats a target keyword phrase over and over again in every sentence or even every couple of sentences. Google will simply say, hey, you're trying to spam me with this particular keyword phrase, and I'm just not going to rank you for it. So how you get around that, and also how you can get some ideas for your writing, is to research some of those semantic keywords. Now, I do have a plugin, WP Semantic, that can help you with that kind of stuff. But I also wanted to give you some tips that you can use for manually hunting down ideas for anything that you might be trying to target. So I just picked out a random product here off of Amazon. Thought it was kind of cool looking, a little rear view mirror car dash cam. Well, you could obviously try to target a wide variety of different keyword phrases relating to this particular product. And any one of them could be used as a basis for doing this kind of research. For example, one of the things that I like to do is to use thesaurus.com. And this isn't really something that you're going to be using on your entire keyword phrase. It's more something that you're going to use on individual words that might be contained within your keyword phrase, or maybe words that relate to your keyword phrase, or just simply other words that you're going to be writing as you go through your content. Well, you can use Thesaurus to help you to find both synonyms and antonyms of any given word. And using those words, not necessarily all of them, but using a relevant selection of those words within your content can be beneficial for search rankings. This is what helps to increase your relevancy, at least one of the things that can help you. So, as an example, using this rear view mirror car dash cam, I could use Thesaurus to try to find other words similar to, or maybe even opposite of the words that are part of what I might want to target as a primary keyword phrase. I'll open up a little notepad here just so we can kind of keep track of things. So let's say I wanted to target something like rear view mirror dash cam, or it could even be something like rear view mirror camera. I could even include other words like car, for example, in there. I'm sure there's a wide variety of different phrases that could be used to target that product. Well, I can then come over to Thesaurus and I can find alternate versions of basically anything that I have within my keyword phrase. Rear view, obviously, it's not pulling up. It uses the word rear and view separately here. So looking at this page, I could easily find a replacement word for the word that I looked up, to where it would still mean the same thing, but it would not contain the original word anymore. And so I could actually craft single words, phrases, or even entire keyword phrases that use completely different words but still mean the same exact thing. So I could do something like behind for the word rear. I could look up the word view. Could use the word glimpse. And then you can repeat this process. Now, I'm not saying that you would necessarily want to be using your different creation of a keyword phrase here, but this should give you some kind of an idea of how a keyword phrase, or even individual words within a keyword phrase, or even relational words to your keyword phrase, can be altered to give you new words to use, but they still relate to what it is that you're trying to target. So my phrase here, behind glimpse reflector camcorder, ultimately still means the same thing. It doesn't sound as great. So I probably wouldn't want to be using a strange phrase like that within my content. However, when I'm talking about the rear view mirror camera, I wouldn't just want to be saying, when I'm talking about the rear view mirror, talking about things in the rear. I would want to use other alternate words using things like behind. I could use words like glimpse and look and so on and so forth to simply have something else to say relating to my subject, but to where I'm not repeating my same words over and over again. Now, you can also find other relational words, what I would consider to be semantic words. You can find, a little ad started playing here in the middle of my video. You can find other relational words by looking up keyword density on other websites. However, you have to take this kind of with a little bit of a grain of salt and not take every word that you see as a commonly used word as necessarily being semantic. You need to, think about what that word actually means. Look it up if need be, and find out whether it actually is a semantic word to what you're trying to target. So I'm going to give you a little example here of what I'm actually talking about. So I just searched rear view mirror camera on Google. And now I'm looking for a page that is highly respected by Google. However, I also want a page that is going to be more content based. I need a lot of text that I can go off of. And I'm going to be looking for semantic words in this text. So I preferably don't want words that are going to be more salesy. So I don't really want sales pages for things like eBay or Walmart or Best Buy or Amazon and so on and so forth. I want more like a really in-depth review page or a really big informational article or something like that. So when I find a page like this top one on CNET here, CNET usually does really good reviews. It's maybe not quite as long as I would have hoped for. Oh wait, I think it's still expanding. I've got some comments down at the bottom, and I've got some text here that I can go off of. So once I have a page that I know has some relational content on it, and obviously Google is respecting this particular page for this search term, I can then take the URL from that page and put it into a keyword density tool. Now the idea here is not to try to copy what the other site is doing. Obviously here, their number one word they're using is CNET. You wouldn't want to use CNET on your site. It is not a semantic word to rearview mirrors in any other way other than the fact that CNET has a number one Google ranking on this particular keyword phrase, and they're obviously reviewing this product. What you're more interested in here are the other words that relate to what the product is or things that might be done with the product, and especially the ones that are not repeating your target keyword phrase again. So here's one example, car tech. That's certainly a semantic word to my target keyword phrase here, and it's not repeating any of the same words. There's other things like radar detector. Sure, radar detector isn't a camera, and it in that way doesn't have a direct relation to my product. However, it's relational in the way that it's car tech. So you have words that you could consider to be very closely relational to your target keyword phrase. And then you have other words that might get a couple of steps away from that. And by steps away, this is kind of what I'm referring to with the rear view mirror camera. And then a step away from that, we have a semantic phrase, car tech. And then another semantic phrase for car tech could be radar detector. So maybe radar detector and rear view mirror camera aren't directly related, but they're still semantic through these relationships. So you're looking through all this content here for words that are commonly used. Obviously, these are going to end up being your higher percentage words for each individual page. However, something else that you're kind of interested in here is not just the results from one individual page. If you go back to Google and try to find another page, looks like a lot of these up top here are more sales page and not informational page. But if you find a second one, here we go. If you find a second page and you do the same scan again with it, using your new URL. And you can not only find different words here, but sometimes you might even be able to identify words in common. Anytime you can find a word that is fairly commonly used in a page that is ranked highly for Google, and then you can also find that same word or phrase in another page that's ranked up there on Google. These are going to be your biggest indicators that they're going to be your semantic words, especially if you can see this relationship repeated over and over and over again on numerous different sites and pages and not just a couple of them. So you can use this kind of research to find things to talk about. Like, I never would have even thought, if I was reviewing a dash cam, to talk about firmware on it. But that could be a whole nother subject. It could be a whole nother section of my website even. Other things, micro SD, SD card, DVR, recording, video. There's tons of words that just easily pop out at you. And if you take a little bit of time to look a little bit deeper, you can find a lot of those other words. Well, it's not that you want to use all of this stuff on your website when you're writing about any given topic. But number one, it can be used, like I was saying earlier, to help you to get ideas of additional things to write about. And it gives you other ways that you can talk about your subject without actually repeating the same word over and over and over and over again. As I pointed out on my IKEA page here, I rank really well for terms like IKEA, my salon. However, that really doesn't occur very frequently throughout my page, especially not when you consider on a percentage basis. I'll punch my IKEA page in here. I guess I was showing this to you a little bit earlier, but this makes another good time to re-emphasize that. My salon, I'm only using 9 times, and that's 2.4% throughout my entire page. I'm not even seeing IKEA my salon. I may have only used that particular phrase a couple of times, or it might not be showing up here because I used sometimes the English version of it, and other times I don't do foreign languages. What's that, accent character or something? It's sometimes done in both ways. The official way is this way, but this gives me a different way to refer to it. Google will look at this and this as 2 different words. And I guarantee that they're both considered to be relational words to this main keyword phrase. So it's just yet another example of what I've been trying to emphasize here in this additional training, with how you can use this research to find extra things to talk about and to find extra words that you can use within your content to make your content more relational to what it is that you're trying to target. Because ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to get great Google rankings. You need great content, and that great content needs to be about your subject and not just simply repeating your subject over and over and over again. This tool is definitely free. This site is tools.seobook.com/general/keyword-density/. And this page gets really good Google rankings too. If you happen to lose the URL or something like that, you should be able to find it by typing in keyword density URL, I believe. Yes, they have the #1 ranking right here. So really easy tool to find and free to use. And their information that they have down here about keyword density is really good information. You know, it's not all about trying to go after a specific percentage for a keyword phrase. There's no right or wrong percentage. However, I like using keyword density to help me find semantic words, and I also like using it to help ensure that I'm not overusing my target keyword phrase. If I were to take the phrase IKEA mice are Ron, and if I just randomly added it 5, 10 times throughout this content, in addition to what I already have there, I almost guarantee that my search rankings for that phrase would completely disappear. So, you know, it's not about using it excessively. It's about it being there and about your content being about that keyword phrase is really how you go about getting those great rankings. And this particular page here, I haven't done any marketing for it. I haven't built any backlinks for it. In fact, I didn't even update it for over a year. I did the updating training lesson as a bonus for Azon Masterclass 1 when I actually revisited this site over a year later and finally updated this page for the first time. So, you know, it really doesn't take an excessive amount of work. If you look at what's on this page, and even if you go back to the original Azon Masterclass 1 recordings and look at what I built for this page, which was even less than what I have here now. And that original page got good rankings for this particular phrase. So it's really more about your content and how you lay out the content on your website, more so than spamming keyword phrases or, you know, getting all these different little tricks and other things that, you know, at least some marketers out there will lead you to believe kind of gives you like a fast track to getting there without doing the hard work. It's really just easier to learn how to do it the right way and put in some time and effort, and then you build the sites, and then they sit there for you. That's when it's automated and hands off. I updated this site, like I said, that one time over a year afterwards, and this thing continually sits there and earns for me every single month. And it's really something I've only worked on over a year and a half ago throughout the course of this training, and then briefly for a day or two over a year after the fact. So that's where your automated hands-free income comes into play. It's after the work is put in, and unfortunately, work is not really sexy on a sales page. So a lot of marketers try to leave out the work aspect of it and try to convince you that there's another way to avoid it, really. And the real way to avoid it is to put in the work, and then you get to avoid it and sit back and collect.